All right. So my name is Bobby Casey. I am the Managing Director for Global Wealth Protection, and we are definitely going to be talking about something a bit different than what you are used to listening to. This is not money making. This is more about privacy and asset protection. So I'm going to teach you how to essentially go off the grid without leaving your couch. So I wrote a preliminary guide a couple of years ago, step-by-step guide for going off the grid without leaving your couch. And here just a couple of weeks ago, I decided it was not good enough, so I rewrote the thing. It is more than double the content and a lot of really in-depth information, and this is what we're going to run through on this PowerPoint. So before we get into it, who am I? My name is Bobby Casey, Managing Director for Global Wealth Protection. So you can find us online, globalwealthprotection.com. And our business, basically, we help people create asset protection and privacy plans for their business, their wealth, and their life. I have a lot of clients who are very keen on internationalization strategies with offshore companies, offshore trusts, second passports. We help people acquire second passports and moving their residency and investing in foreign assets, that sort of thing. We also have a lot of clients that are not so internationally focused, interested more in protecting their assets that they have domestically and basically reclaiming a bit of that privacy that we seem to constantly lose on a daily basis. I think the last presenter, I believe his name's Robert, mentioned something that privacy is going by the way of the dodo. And for the most part, he is correct. Privacy is a dying commodity, but we've got some strategies here that I'll work with you to help reclaim it. So that's a little bit about my business, a little bit about me. I have lived in, I don't know, half a dozen or so different countries. I've traveled to 70 or 80 countries. I stopped counting years ago. I've lived in Europe, a couple of places in the U.S., Central America, South America, and in the Caribbean. So got quite a bit of international experience. On the business side, I've bought and or sold more than a dozen businesses over the years. And from an educational standpoint, for those of you that think that is significant, my educational background is in finance, economics, and law. So pretty diverse background all around. So let's get started. When you talk about going off the grid, this is probably what most of you imagine. Well, at least this is what I kind of envision. This is the thing that kind of pops into my head, I think. I think of living in the cabin in northern Idaho, rainwater catch tanks, a solar panel on the roof, maybe a chicken house out back, and rows of tomatoes and potatoes. The problem is, for me, this is not a lifestyle I am really interested in living. I don't want to give up the creature comforts of running water and grid source electricity, my laptop, my smartphone, and going to the cinema without having to worry about, looking over my shoulder. Ultimately, I think I have no issue. I'm not disparaging people who choose this off-the-grid lifestyle, living in the cabin in northern Idaho. But for me, if I were to go that route because of my ideology, in a sense, I become a slave to my own ideology, being overly focused on the privacy aspects. So for me, I wanted to find a way where I could get that level of privacy without having to give up the creature comforts of, like I said, having running water and grid source electricity and going to the movies on the weekends. So this is something I was really looking forward to achieving, and this is something I've spent a lot of years on kind of narrowing it down to find the strategies that work. So when we talk about risks, what are our risks to privacy? In today's age, this is your risk. This right here, everybody I'm pretty sure knows what this is. This is a server farm. This is just rows and rows and rows of servers that are aggregating data about you and me and everyone else in the world. And there are thousands and thousands of these things spotted all around the world that aggregate our data. This is ultimately our risk. 50 years ago, we didn't have server farms. We didn't have to worry about all of our information being easily accessible with a few clicks of the mouse. But nowadays, anybody can access your information. I know people think, well, it's hard to find this stuff. But the reality is it's really not that hard to find this stuff. And I'll give you some things to look at in this presentation to give you some ideas on how people do find your information. As a matter of fact, in the last presentation, Robert mentioned a few times skip tracers. Skip tracers have some very specific techniques they use to find your information, both for good and for bad. And data miners use a lot of these same tools too. Private investigators, skip tracers use a lot of this information. But the reality is nowadays, all your information is sitting on server farms somewhere. So as long as you are savvy enough to access the data on these servers, you can find just about anything about anybody that has been put out there to be found. So what are some of these common databases? First of all, I want to make sure you understand, this is obviously not an all-inclusive list. I was not intending to create an exhaustive list here of all the common databases. There's thousands of them. However, the 7 I've got mentioned here are very, very critical databases where a lot of your information is stored and kept, where you put a lot of this information in there. And a lot of your other databases actually pull their data from these sources, and they aggregate this data to build a profile of you. So first of all, you got your driver's license. What's on your driver's license? Your name, your home address, your driver's license number, your age, your birth date. In most states, you've got your height, your weight, maybe your eye color, hair color, and a picture of you. That's quite a lot of information right there in one little record. That, believe it or not, if you're pretty savvy, most everybody can access your driver's license and thus, number 2, your driving record. This information is not so hard to come across, and it gives people a lot of information there as well. So your vehicle registration is another one. To me, this is one of the biggest holes in your privacy dam, so to speak. This is where one of your biggest leaks come from because, let's be honest, most of us are driving around in a car on a daily basis. We've got a license plate on the back of the car and in some places on the front of the car as well, where you can pull all kinds of information from a vehicle registration from the license plate. Typically, when you buy a car, your name is on the title, your home address is on the title, the information about the vehicle is on there. So people can pull up a lot of information about that. So if you're driving around in a Mercedes S550 with your name on it and your home address, you've told a lot of people, you've told anybody who wants to pull that information that you have enough money to buy a 6-figure car, and you've given them your home address and your name. So you have intentionally provided this information. We'll get into some solutions here in a minute. Property records is another thing. Anytime you own, your home, rental properties, rental houses, apartment buildings, vehicles, motorhomes, boats, any of this information or any of these things, those are all recorded in property records. Anything with a title or a deed has record of the ownership record there. For example, your house. If you own $1 million house and you got a $500,000 mortgage, the house is in your name. I can see your home address. I could see the property address of the home. I can see the mortgage of $500,000. I can see the tax records that at least the tax department has valued your property at $1 million. I now know your name. I know your home address. I know you have at least $500,000 in equity in your property. So from an asset protection standpoint, if I wanted to sue you, if I was going to sue you for some reason, I could easily pull up and see, looks like this person here has at least $500,000 in equity in their house. So if I sue them and I win, at a minimum, I can get a lien on their house and force them or attempt to force them into foreclosure and try to collect on that judgment. So I've given people a lot of information just by having my name on this property record. Criminal record, of course, is another place which is also typically tied to your driver's license and your driving record. A lot of information there. Voter registration is an interesting one because if you're a registered voter, you have in the district where you're registered, you've provided them information like your driver's license number, your home address, your phone number, probably your social security number, and your voter affiliation, right? So all of this stuff, people can aggregate this data and start to build a picture around you, okay? Next is your credit reports. So I've listed on here the three biggest ones in the U.S. Of course, outside of the U.S., there's other credit reporting agencies for those countries. So, but as we discussed with Jeanette, it looks like the majority of the listeners are going to be from the U.S. But this information is relevant for non-U.S. attendees as well. But I just kind of targeted it towards Americans since that was the primary audience. So your credit reporting agencies, your three main ones anyway, are Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. This is a wealth of information that for anybody savvy enough to pull this information up. Within that credit report, every piece of information about credit cards, mortgages, again, I can see your credit history. I can see if you've made any late payments. I can see your home address, all of your previous home addresses that were recorded, phone numbers. I can see, in many cases, your spouse's name, your kids' names. I can, I mentioned phone numbers, tons of information that are in these credit reports that most people have no idea that it's actually there. So from an asset protection standpoint, purely speaking at this point, if I sued you for $1 million, hypothetically speaking, and I go to an attorney and I say, hey, I want to sue this guy for $1 million, this attorney is going to come to me most likely and say, all right, let me do a little checking into this guy. Let's see what it looks like. I'll get back to you in a couple of days. The first thing he's going to do is do a check on you to see what your asset picture looks like. He's going to pull things like your credit report, your driving information, your vehicle registration, your property records, all this stuff. So imagine if he pulls up your credit report and sees that you've got 10 credit cards with a $10,000 limit and you've maxed out all your credit cards, okay? So you've got $100,000 in available credit and you're at 100% credit usage. My assumption would be, after seeing that piece of information, that you are not a good target for me to sue. I'm probably not getting any money out of you. However, if I find that you have 10 credit cards with a $100,000 credit limit and zero credit use, you've got $1 million in credit, which means some banks, 10 banks out there, or 10 credit card companies out there, decided you were a very, very good credit risk. So that piece of information tells me maybe you are a good person to pursue for litigation to try to sue you and get some money out of you. Property records, I mentioned, if I see you got a $1 million house with a $500,000 mortgage, I know I can at least get a lien on your house and go after that little bit of equity. So these are the risks you've got right here. And do yourself a favor. I'm going to give you a website to look at right now. I mean, don't look at it right now. Write it down right now. Look at it later. But go to Intellius.com, INTELLIUS.com. This is what a lot of your private investigators and skip tracers use, and there's a few others like it, but this is just one of the very good ones. Run a report on yourself. It's going to cost you a few bucks. I think last time I checked, it was 30 or 40 bucks to run a report on yourself. But run the report on Intellius, and you will start to see where some of your own holes in your own privacy dam are exposed. You may be amazed to find out that a DUI you got 20 years ago pulls up on Intellius, or your cell phone number pulls up on Intellius, or something you posted about on Facebook 5 years ago that was controversial will pull up on Intellius. You'd be amazed at some of the stuff. So do yourself a favor, run a report on yourself, just to get kind of a little picture of what you look like to somebody else looking at you. So it'll give you some idea on how private you really are. So anyway, let's move forward here. So ultimately, this is what we're trying to create for you. Every king in medieval times built his castle with high walls and a moat. He did it for a reason. He wanted privacy, he wanted to protect his family, and he wanted to protect his kingdom. Ultimately, this is what we're trying to do for you in these 9 steps. We're trying to build this moat. We're trying to build the walls and the moat around your life so that you have privacy and people can't see everything that's happening in your life, where you live, what you do, where your kids go to school, what your hobbies and habits are. So ultimately, building this privacy structure is kind of like, building the moat and the castle walls around your life. So step 1, remove your home address from any public record. I cannot stress this one enough. If you skip steps 2 through 9, this is the one you don't skip. This is the most important one you can do, and steps 2 through 9 depend on you doing step 1 first. This is the critical factor of your privacy structure. Your home, like in the previous picture, is your castle. You want privacy in your domain, where you hang your hat. No one needs to know where you hang your hat. It's just your right to have privacy in your own home, okay? Now, I don't want to go into why you want privacy, why you need it. Who knows? Everybody has their own reasons, but as we all know, living in today's age, identity theft is a huge issue. I mean, you can't go a week now without getting some notification of some bank that had a data breach. Equifax just recently had a huge data breach, right? Facebook supposedly had a big data breach recently. So you can't go just a few days without seeing a data breach going on, and it affects every one of us. I mean, I got an email today from a bank that had a data breach a few months ago for asking me to join a class action lawsuit. I personally wasn't affected in this situation, but I started looking into it, and I realized there was like 10 million people affected by this data breach. So basically, the idea here is to remove your home address from any public record, because any public record out there that anybody can access, going back to running the Intellia search, if they can find your home address, they can find out a lot of information about you. Plus, using your home address can be very, let's say, detrimental. Let's just leave it at that. How do you remove your home address from public record? The easiest way, and this is going to seem silly, and maybe a lot of you already do this, but people don't really think about this in such terms. But the easiest way is to create a virtual address. The easiest one I have found is a UPS store. There's tons of these private mail centers out there, so you can use whichever one you want. But a UPS store, there's a lot of them around. But the point is, the reason, and I'm just going to use the UPS store for the remainder of the example, but the reason why you want the UPS store address, not a P.O. box. You do not want a P.O. box. The reason being is a P.O. box reads as P.O. Box 1234 anywhere USA, right? Your bank, all of your financial institutions, your driver's license, all of these things require a physical address. You have to give them the perception of a physical address for all of these data providers, or all of these companies you're doing business with, and your driver's license, insurance companies, all this stuff. So a UPS store is a great option for this. So, for example, you go to your nearest UPS store. You buy the box address for, you can pay for it quarterly or annually or whatever. It's going to cost you a couple $100. But the point is, it reads as a physical address. You will get an address that says 123 Main Street, unit or suite number 123, Anywhereville, USA. The point is, it appears to be a physical address. It'll look like an apartment or a condo or a townhome or something like that. As a matter of fact, once you go through this process, if you go back and pull up your credit report, it'll probably appear as a multifamily housing unit. because once you write in that unit number or suite number 123 for your address, then they're going to assume that is a multifamily housing, like an apartment complex or something. So that is one piece of the puzzle. Remove the home address. But once you get this address, once you get this virtual address, now you need to literally cross every T and dot every I in your life. And what I mean by that is every bank, you need to change your address to this new virtual address. Every insurance company you work with, your cell phone company, your brokerage accounts, everything of everything of everything. Like, take a piece of paper and start listing them out, writing them out, because I promise you this is going to take a little bit of time. Because there's going to be ones you forget. You're gonna go through this process, and then 2 weeks later you're going to be like, I forgot that whatever, my kid's school has my home address listed. Okay, every single one of these you need to update to your new virtual address. Okay, one important one that I'll mention real quick is your utility bills. So for example, and I'm going to give you a way around this in a minute, but even your utility bills, you need to give them your virtual address. Now, of course, they're going to have your service address. Obviously, the power company has the service address because the wire literally runs into your home. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that is your address. You can own a home and not live there, right? So as far as your credit reporting goes with your utility company, you need to update them. Call them up and say, hey, I need to update you with my new address, and give them your whatever, 123 Main Street, suite number 123, Anywhereville, USA, okay? Give them this address. They're obviously still going to have your service address, but from any reporting standpoint, they're going to report you with your actual physical address that they have for you. So this is important. Everything of everything. Now you need to update your driver's license. This one's important. This one's really, really important. Remember earlier I told you all those databases, the driver's license is a big one. So you need to go to the DMV and say, hey, I need to update my driver's license. I've got a new address, so I need to get a new license with my new address. It's a piece of cake. Well, going to the DMV or the driver's license office is never a piece of cake, right? But the process, at least once you get to the front of the line, is a piece of cake. We all realize getting to the front of the line is the biggest factor there at the driver's license office. But anyway, just tell them you have a new address. They'll get it on your driver's license. You're good to go. The reason why this is important, you need to have the driver's license updated. You need your bank statements updated. You need your utility bills updated. Your insurance company needs the new address. Everything needs the new address, and we'll get to this in a couple of steps here later when we discuss your credit report, but you need to have these done. Do not skip any of these, okay? Now, beyond step one, in our guide, we have a step 1.1, 1.2, and a 1.3. I don't have time to go into those because those are kind of expert level or pro level tips on removing your home address from public record, but I'll tell you real quick. Step 1.1, we have a strategy where you can start using a home address, a physical home address in another state, and there's some very good reasons for that. I'll just give you a quick example. I've got a very good friend of mine and a client of mine who he literally moves about every 2 months. His job, he lives in corporate housing or apartments or rented apartments or sometimes even hotels for a month or two at a time. He literally has no home, okay? Every couple of months he's moving. Well, his original home is from a very high tax state. Well, what we did for him is we moved his home residency to a zero tax state. Okay, in this case, we used Nevada. So we moved all of his everything, driver's license, his credit card bills, his bank statements, everything was changed to this Nevada address. So now he no longer has to pay state income tax. He does not have a home in his old state, but he didn't have a new home to change to. So we changed his new home to a zero tax state. So now he can, at least he saves, in his case, about 8% a year on his state income tax. So anyway, that's step 1.1, to use an out-of-state address, and there's all kinds of reasons you would do that. We go in depth in the guide to how and why to accomplish that. Step 1.2 uses a foreign address. I'll give you a good example in a couple of steps here on why you might want to use a foreign address. But it works a lot like step 1.1, but instead of using an out-of-state address, you're using a virtual address in another country. And then step 1.3 is very much the pro level tip for step 1, using what we call a ghost address. All right, this is the next huge hole in your privacy dam, let's call it, your phone. The reason your phone is a huge hole in your privacy dam is you give this thing out everywhere to everyone for everything, right? Now you can't go to Barnes & Noble and buy a book without them asking for your email and your phone number, or you can't go to H&M without them wanting your phone number and your email address, right? So the point is, you've given your phone number out. Now, we'll just use Barnes & Noble as the example. You give them your phone number, but that information goes into their database. At some point, they end up selling that information to other people. They use it for marketing to you, but they also sell that information to other people. Now your name is associated with your cell phone number at this point, right? So the idea here is your phone is a big hole, and we need to fix that. We need to remove your home telephone number from any public record. This is actually a lot simpler than you think. It's a lot like step 1, except instead of getting a virtual address, this time we're going to get a virtual phone number. The easiest one I have found to use is Google Voice. You can get up to 2 phone numbers with Google Voice. It's completely free to use them, or to receive calls on them. If you want to make calls with Google Voice, then you need to pay a little bit of money, but you need to have some money on your account, some credits. But just to receive calls, it's completely free. You download the app on your phone, and you can get up to 2 phone numbers. Now, just like in step 1, you're going to update every single person that has your phone number, every single company, every single account you've got, every single one. Again, you've got to cross every T and dot every I. And in a minute, I'll tell you why this is significant. But when you call your bank, let's say you bank with Bank of America, and you call your bank and say, I need to update with my new address and my new phone number. Actually, you don't even need to call the bank nowadays. You can do it online. But when you update them, give them your virtual address and your virtual phone number. When you update your American Express account, give them your new virtual address and your new virtual phone number. It's very, very important, because over time, usually 2-3 months, your old information kind of falls down on the list, and now your new information becomes on the top of the list. So now in public record, you've got this new virtual address that appears to be your home, and this new virtual phone number that appears to be your phone number. So the idea with going off the grid without leaving your couch, you can't avoid being in all these public databases. Nowadays, aside from actually living in that cabin in northern Idaho in the middle of the woods, you cannot really avoid being on these databases. But what you can do is you can control the information that they have. Instead of letting them pull the information by default, you feed them the information you want them to have. And this is what we're talking about in step 1 and 2. Instead of letting them pull your home address information because you provided it to your American Express account 10 years ago, you need to feed them the proper address that you want them to have. Same with your phone number. Okay, so and I mentioned step 2 using Google Voice. There's plenty of other options out there. Skype, for example. Maybe you want a foreign phone number. Maybe you end up getting a foreign address in, let's say, the UK. Maybe you want a phone number to match the address. So you can get Skype. You can buy a Skype phone number in the UK if you'd like. Credit report. This is a critical one we need to look at because this is one of the most important databases that people will use to build your personal profile. So what we're talking about here is you need to check, update, and dispute your credit report on a regular basis. I recommend at least twice a year. And I'm going to give you a website. Write this down. www.creditkarma.com. Credit, C-R-E-D-I-T, karma, K-A-R-M-A.com. Credit Karma is a free service that you can use to monitor your credit reports. I think they monitor 2 of them. I forget which 2 now. I don't think they monitor all 3. But more or less, all 3 are getting the same input information. But it's a free service. You can monitor your credit information there. And this is important because, number one, you could have some wrong information in there. I personally had a situation a few years ago where there was a credit card account on my credit report that was not mine. And I disputed it, and we found out that basically somebody had a similar name. They crossed the databases, and the credit report, or their credit card account, ended up on my credit report. Luckily, the person paid his bill on time, so I didn't have any negative consequences from it. But still, I didn't want it on there, so I had them to remove it. So it's important you need to check, update, and dispute your report on a regular basis. For this reason, because you need to make sure what is on your report is actually your information. You can't, if you have a credit card, you can't not have that credit card company report to the credit bureaus. What you can do is, like I said, in step 1 and 2, you're going to update them with your new virtual address and your new virtual phone number. At this point, you have also updated all of your credit cards, bank accounts, your cell phone company, your utility companies, your driver's license, everything with your new virtual address, and then also with your new virtual phone number. Because when you pull up your new credit reports, you're going to see on there your current home address, because at some point you have provided somebody, probably a credit card company, for example, with your current home address. You've also provided them with a phone number. That information is going to remain on your credit report unless you dispute it. So what you need to do is go to all 3 of the credit reporting agencies and dispute it. Now, you need to go directly to the website, Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. I almost forgot. TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. You need to go directly to their site. They have a dispute process. It's pretty easy. You can do them online. Take you a few minutes. But what you do, if you see your home address listed, and you will on those credit reports, you need to dispute it and tell them that address is not yours, okay? But you have to follow step 1 and 2 first, where you've updated everything. You've crossed every T and you've dotted every I, because what happens, so let's say you've got an American Express card. You have called up American Express at this point. You have told them, hey, I need to update you with my new virtual address, my new well, obviously you're not telling them it's virtual, but you've updated them with your new virtual address, your new virtual phone number. After 1 or 2 months, American Express will update all of the credit agencies with your new information. So that will start to appear in your credit reports, which means from that point forward, your new reported information is going to be this new address. You cannot dispute your current home address until you've changed that current home address to a new address, because American Express will still be reporting every month your address on, whatever your current home address is. So you have to dispute it after you have changed everything. And I hope that's clear. So anyway, make sure you dispute it, because the main point is you want to get your home address out of public record. You want it off of your credit report. You want that phone number off of your credit report. You want anything off of there that you do not want to be a matter of public record, and you need to dispute it as soon as you get steps 1 and 2 done. All right, next we're going to talk about your money, your wealth, your assets, your future wealth here. So Step 4, get all of your assets out of your own name. A lot of you have heard this before. I think even in the last presentation, a couple of people asked, should they create an entity for the purpose of this business? And Robert mentioned that it was a low-risk business. You're not going to get sued for it, so you don't need the entity. Now, I would argue a little bit to that point. I think you need the entity, but I'm coming from the privacy standpoint, not necessarily the liability standpoint. I'm certain that business is definitely a low-risk business, but from a privacy standpoint, I don't want you to keep any assets in your own name. And when I say any asset, I mean literally anything. I'm talking about your house, your beach house, your mountain house, the rental houses that you rent out, any apartment buildings you're renting out, your boat, your cars, your airplane, anything you've got that has a title or a deed to it that has to be recorded in some agency. Keep in mind, anytime something is recorded in an agency, it goes into that agency's database, and then whatever is recorded becomes record in that agency. What you want is nothing recorded in your own name. So the way you do this, now I can't go into the specifics because everybody has their own personal situation, but basically we're using properly structured private LLCs and trusts. So some cases maybe a trust is right for you, maybe some case an LLC is right for you. A lot of this depends on the asset itself. Maybe you have some debt associated with the assets like mortgages or something like that. But the point is, get everything out of your name. And I'll give you a really quick example here. This is one of my favorite examples. But imagine you pull into a parking space at the grocery store. You see an empty space, and beside that space is a really nice, expensive Mercedes S550, and you notice a huge dent in the door. You don't think much about it, but you get out of your car, do your grocery shopping, come back out. When you come back out, there is a really, really angry guy standing there taking pictures of the back of your car, the damage to his door, your license plate. Maybe he takes a picture of you personally when you walk up, and he is really irate because he assumes you're the one that put the dent in his door, because when he went in the grocery store, the dent wasn't there. Unbeknownst to you and him, it was the car that had left the space before you got there. Regardless, there's two scenarios. One, he takes the information he takes a picture of your license plate. You don't want anything to do with it. You didn't do the damage. You pull out of the space, drive home. The problem with that is, based on your vehicle registration records, it's registered in your name, probably to your home address, maybe even your phone number associated with it. The problem is the sheriff's probably going to come knocking on your door. You might end up getting arrested for fleeing the scene of an accident, but at a minimum, you're going to get a subpoena to appear in court to defend yourself against something you had nothing to do with. Alternatively, if your car was registered into a properly structured private LLC's name, and especially if we go to step 1, 2, and we use a foreign address in, let's say, the Netherlands, it's going to be really, really difficult. So you can imagine now you leave, you go home. Now the guy has your license plate number. The policeman runs the license plate and sees, this car is registered to ABC Limited, out of state. It doesn't matter, but let's say Wyoming. ABC Limited in Wyoming. Okay. Now they go to the Wyoming Secretary of State's website, and they pull up the records for ABC Limited in Wyoming, and they see, well, there's no members or no managers. There's no person physically associated with this company. Well, where is this company located? So they find the address, and they find out the address is an address in the Netherlands. Can you imagine how difficult it's going to be to chase down an owner for a big dang door? If you're talking about a properly structured private LLC in Wyoming with an address in the Netherlands. So I hope you get my point. The same thing about property. And back to the asset protection aspect of it. Get your assets out of your own name. You want to have as low a profile as possible. Effectively, you want to be a ghost. like I said, if I want to sue you for $1 million, the first thing I'm going to do is hire a lawyer, and he's going to do searches for me. If he can find something in your name that looks like he can get a payday, he's going to come back to me and say, sure, I'll take that case on a 30 or 40 or a 50% contingency. If he does a search for you and he can't find any property in your name, he can't even find a vehicle registered in your name, you appear basically as a ghost, he'll come back to me and say, sure, I'd love to take your case. I'm going to need a $10,000 or a $20,000 retainer to get started. And in a lot of cases, that's enough to basically stop the legal process, because maybe I'm looking at this going, well, maybe I don't want to take the risk of spending $10,000 or $20,000 to go after this person when even my lawyer can't find any assets in this guy's name. So anyway, the point is, you want to be from a public record standpoint, you want to be a ghost. All of your assets out of your own name. You don't want that to be found, okay? I'm going to go through this one fairly quickly. We're going to talk about your online privacy. Basically, you need to create a plan to manage your online privacy. And I'll mention first of all, social media, because the problem with most, let's say, holes in your privacy dam with social media is you, okay? Now, I'm sure a lot of you have Facebook accounts or Twitter or Instagram, but I'm not saying you don't just delete them. I mean, of course, that would be your best case scenario from a privacy standpoint, but it's not completely necessary. But what you shouldn't be doing is every time you go to dinner with your wife, you check into that restaurant. Every time you go on vacation, you check in when you're in Cancun. Every time you go to Starbucks on the way to work every Monday morning, you check in at Starbucks. There's no reason for you to do that. You're basically building a profile about your entire life on social media by doing that. So you can use social media to check up on friends and, stay connected. The main point with social media is I want you to kind of think about every time you're thinking about posting something, checking on something, posting something, liking something, just think, how does this impact my privacy? So the main point I want to discuss with online privacy is you really need to be using privacy VPNs. A VPN stands for virtual private network. There's several of them available, but basically a VPN is a software program you can download on your computer and on your phone. I recommend both. And you can mask your location and your activities online at all times. So for example, if you were to send me an email right now and you're sitting in Kansas City, I can pull your source data from your email, track your IP address down, and pinpoint, maybe not exactly pinpoint, but I can get a very close proximity where you are physically sitting when you send me that email. However, if you're using a privacy VPN and you log into your VPN and you choose an IP address in, let's say, Singapore, well, now the source data comes through. I can pull up the source data. I can check your IP address. The only thing I'm going to see is you're sitting in Singapore. You could literally log out and then log back in with a different IP address in, let's say, Stockholm, Sweden. Send me another email, and as far as I'm concerned, on the IP address, it's going to appear that 5 minutes later you're sitting in Stockholm, Sweden. So using these privacy VPNs is a really, really great tool to managing your online privacy. This is also where a lot of your data breaches come from. And privacy VPNs the good ones do a really, really good job of blocking phishing attacks, spam attacks, different bots that can get in your computer that basically create a serious breach to your privacy. These VPNs do a really good job of that. And they're not very expensive. I think I pay maybe $100 a year, $150 a year to use to me, it's cheap insurance to manage my privacy. But I would encourage you on your phone and your laptop, find a good privacy VPN that will protect yourself while you're online, because this is where your biggest breach of data, your actual data, because this is the easiest place where people can attack you, is your activities online. All right, next we're going to talk about your banking. My recommendation is to minimize your reliance and connection to your home banking system. So again, let's assume we're talking to primarily Americans, but this would be relevant to wherever you're from. If you're Canadian, maybe you want to open a bank account in the US. If you're German, maybe you want to open a bank account in Singapore. I don't know. But what I'm talking about here is minimizing your reliance and connection to your home banking system. So essentially what I'm telling you is take a portion of your money, your nest egg, and open an offshore bank account. Now, when I say offshore, what I mean is a bank account outside of your country, where you live. I don't necessarily mean some remote island in the middle of nowhere, although there's plenty of good offshore banks in the Caribbean as well, but that's not what I'm talking about. I specifically mean open a bank account outside of your home country and start building a nest egg there, because from a privacy standpoint, back to the lawyer running the search, I sue you for $1 million, the lawyer is going to run a search on you to see if you're a good target. There are ways to find out where you have your bank accounts and your average daily balances, believe it or not. I know it's hard to imagine that that's possible, but keep in mind, back to that image of the server farm, anytime that information is being aggregated in servers, there are going to be ways for people to access it. So if you've got $500,000 sitting in your Bank of America account, and I'm going to sue you for $1 million, my lawyer is probably going to be able to find a close approximation of how much money you've got in your bank account. Now, speaking about other things here, there are ways I can build a profile around what I think to be your net worth. I mentioned it before with property record searches, right? If I see you own a house with a tax value of $1 million and I can see a mortgage in your name for $500,000, I know you have at least a $500,000 minimum net worth. If I see you have a car worth $150,000, I know you can at least afford to buy a car for $150,000. Either you can afford, a monthly payment on a $150,000 car, or you bought one. I can make some assumptions and work backwards from there to get an idea on your net worth. Now, I'm speaking strictly from an asset protection standpoint, but this is also one of the main reasons to protect your privacy, because you also want to put that wall and that moat around your wealth as well. And this is what we're talking about here. Move a piece of your money, and maybe open a brokerage account outside of the U.S. And if you're a trader, or if you're just, I don't know, maybe you just hold a bunch of ETFs, but just start building that nest egg outside of your home banking system, just as a diversification strategy to help build, let's say, to help secure your wealth and to help kind of put that veil of privacy around your assets as well. One more quick thing I'm going to mention about money here that I didn't mention before, but an interesting thing, a lot of people are using their credit cards. For example, you go to Starbucks every morning at 9 o'clock at the same Starbucks, and you use your American Express card to pay your bill. You're creating a profile of your location and what you're doing, right? Maybe start using more cash. You can also start using some prepaid debit cards or prepaid credit cards. If you don't know what those are, you can generally buy them at banks. You can get them sometimes at convenience stores. There's lots of places. Just Google search prepaid debit cards. But basically, you can load money on these cards. There's no account there. You put $1,000 on one of these cards, you can swipe it, for the $1,000. It's also a good way if you don't want to hold money in your bank account. You're not comfortable opening an offshore bank account. You don't want to have stacks of cash laying around. Maybe put a bunch of money on these prepaid debit cards and stick them in your safe. You can put a lot of money on a prepaid debit card, and you can hold a lot of cash in your hands on those things that you can swipe to charge with. So it's a good option to start thinking about your privacy from your spending habits as well, but also storing some cash. So I'm not going to go into too much depth on this because, as I understand from Jeanette, a lot of the people on this webinar, maybe the majority of you, are already self-employed or running your own business. So I'm not going to get too much into entrepreneurship. This is something. I'm a lifelong entrepreneur. I've been running dozens of businesses over the years. So I'm a firm believer in it. But from a privacy standpoint, entrepreneurship also is pretty beneficial. I mean, you get a lot more control over the money you earn and what you do with it and how you spend it, right? You also get a lot more privacy on what you're doing. For example, maybe instead of running your business through your home state company, then maybe you run it through a business registered in another state, so you can change some of that. So anyway, I don't want to dig too much into entrepreneurship, but this is definitely something. Even if you have a normal W-2 job, remember, once you sign that W-4, you've given your employer a lot of information about you as well, and that becomes, at least with the tax department, that stuff is recorded in databases as well. So anyway, even if you have that W-2 job, I think getting at least a side gig on the side can help you kind of peel off a piece of your income in a private way as well. So this is more or less the last slide, although I do have a quick bonus slide as well. But this, I'm talking about creating your own private company. I don't mean this from an entrepreneurship standpoint. I mean for the purpose of using the company as kind of a surrogate to yourself. So going back to getting your utility bills using your virtual address. Well, if you take that one step further, maybe you create your own properly structured private LLC, and you put your utility bills in that LLC's name. You put your cell phone bill in that LLC's name. You get credit cards in that LLC's name. Now, you're probably going to have to personally guarantee them from the start, but anyway, the point is getting your own properly structured private LLC basically can help remove your name out of all these public databases, okay? So if you have a brokerage account, for example, you've got that Charles Schwab brokerage account, you've got $500,000 in there you're trading. Create a properly structured private LLC and then basically transfer all your money or all of your assets into this LLC account. Get that out of your name and create that private company that you do not have any personal connection to as a matter of public record. So this is a very big step for a lot of people, but it's a lot easier than you think, and it will absolutely be one of the biggest things you could do to regain a big piece of your privacy, because essentially that private LLC becomes you from a public record standpoint. But if I go to let's say the Secretary of State's website, if it's properly structured, I'm not going to be able to find your name anywhere associated with it. So lastly, and I'm going to go through this one real quick. This is kind of an interesting one. This is not relevant for everybody. This obviously only works if it's, number one, something you're interested in, and number two, you're capable of this type of lifestyle. But basically, living in a motorhome like a full-time RVer is a very interesting way to have a completely private life. So again, I'm not going to go into the details of this, but imagine you're living on the beach in Florida for a month, and then you basically pack all your stuff up and you go to the mountains in Asheville for a month. It's pretty darn hard to track somebody's location if they're driving around in a motorhome all the time. And it's an interesting life. I personally have done this at one point in my life for a while, and it was actually really kind of a cool thing. But kind of a pro tip, if you are going to look into this, you can register an LLC in Montana and register your vehicle, register your RV in Montana. Montana has no sales tax. They have no property tax, no sales tax on vehicles, no property tax on vehicles, and they have no inspection, no annual inspection. So you have a Montana plate on your vehicle, and the vehicle's registered into ABC Montana LLC. So you've also created privacy around the vehicle itself. So anyway, moving on. People do pay me tens of thousands of dollars to help them protect their data and protect their privacy and build businesses while being totally detached from it. I've been doing this for more than a decade, and people do pay me quite a lot of money to basically hold their hand and walk them step by step through this process. But there are things you can do right now for less than the cost of a steak dinner to protect yourself from those who really do spend their lives going after your data. And this is a huge industry. I mean, data or identity theft is a huge industry, and this is only one of the risks that you face today with your privacy. So we have our report, our step-by-step guide for going off the grid without leaving your couch. You can find it at gwpinsiders.com/thirsty. It's about a 30-page report. It's only $100, $97. You're going to get a ton of information out of it. We go through explicit details in all 9 steps that we just covered in this webinar on how to dramatically increase your privacy, getting anonymity for your home, your business, your vehicles, how to get complete online privacy, protecting your data, and a whole lot more. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take those now. Jeanette, if you have any, I'd be happy to answer anything.
Okay, yeah. Hey, Bobby. All right. Aaron asks, I'm a business structure novice. Can I set up an LLC by myself, or should I consult a lawyer? And how much do you charge for hand-holding? That hand-holding thing may be a separate conversation, but the LLC definitely could be discussed here.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you can do an LLC by yourself, no doubt. I mean, people do it all the time. The problem is, if you're going for privacy, most people make mistakes, okay? Because I've done a lot of restructuring of LLCs. I mean, one of the key parts of our business is we do LLC structuring, company formation, and trust administration for clients. And I've done a lot of restructuring for people, and I find a lot of errors. I recently just had a client who, he had a privacy issue because he was in a, nothing illegal, but he was in a controversial industry, and what he didn't want is his name attached to his business. And when we started going through his structure, and this is a really, really smart guy. This is not your average guy. This guy makes a lot of money and very, very brilliant guy. But what I found was, literally in 10 minutes, I found his name, his home address, his cell phone number, and the license plate number of his car, his vehicle registration information, everything, just by going through his business name. So you can register the LLC yourself, but the reality is you're probably not going to do it right, and you're going to leave yourself holes in your privacy structure. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. So I would encourage you, if you really are serious about privacy, this is not the place you want to cut corners. Okay. And to give myself obviously a quick self promo here, we do private LLC structures, privacy structures for clients all the time.
All right. You made a comment. 401k and IRA accounts are not eligible for lawsuits. That's a question. It's yes or no.
Well, some states they are, some states they're not. However, there is something you can do with 401ks and IRAs if you're willing to self-manage them, self-direct them. You can actually this is a whole different topic, but basically you have your IRA custodian. Let's say, for example, I don't know, Fidelity, for example. If you have your IRA or your 401k with Fidelity, they limit you to the products they sell. If you want to self-manage it, you can roll it over to a custodian that will basically let you put all of your assets into an LLC that you are the manager of, and then you can invest in whatever you want. Now, that could still be stocks and bonds and ETFs and whatnot, but it can also be real estate or private businesses or whatever. If you go that route, you get a lot more asset protection because you've created an additional layer in there between your IRA custodian and the assets themselves. But from a lawsuit standpoint, it really depends on the state. Some states have laws that protect a piece of your IRA. Some states protect all of it. So you have to talk to somebody locally where you live.
All right, let's try to whip through some of these, all right?
Yep.
All right, does this work for international clients like Europe, Germany, Canada?
It does, yeah. I work with a lot of clients. Probably only about half my clients are Americans, actually. I work with a lot of Europeans. I've had a ton of Canadians lately for some reason. I don't know. But, yeah, it works for everybody.
Okay, what do you do about your driver's license when they insist you be a resident of a certain state to register a car?
Well, as far as they're concerned, you are a resident of that state because you've given them your residential address. Remember, that address you give them is far on the surface. It is literally a residential address. It's going to look like an apartment building.
Could providing misleading personal information be considered illegal at some level?
You're not providing misleading information. Remember, basically, when somebody says, "I need your home address for this information," they don't necessarily need your home address. They need a physical address. They're conditioned to ask you for your home address. They don't actually ever really need your home address. You're not providing it. I mean, I personally have my home address or my driver's license with the UPS address, and I got pulled over recently. Like 3 or 4 months ago for a speeding ticket, and I told the police officer, I said, "Yeah, this is my mailing address." He goes, "Oh, okay." I mean, it doesn't make any difference.
Yeah, boom. All right, one last question. What about my personal home tax exemption, $25,000 IRS, Fed, driver's license, U.S. citizenship? I don't hear the question. That's exactly.
Are you talking? I think they're talking about the legal exemption for bankruptcy court. So, and that varies by state. So I'd have to know what state you're from. So, for example, Florida has a very high threshold for bankruptcy exemption. So basically, like if I were to sue you in Florida, your house is generally protected up to a very high threshold. But some states it's very, very low. 25,000 is a very low limit. So as far as that legal protection, you actually have a lot more legal protection if your home is in an LLC, as long as it's properly structured.
Bobby, this was super informative, and I feel like we could go on and on and on because the questions are just pouring in. Guys, Bobby's put this 30-page report together for you, gwpinsiders.com/thirsty, and he takes all these ideas and concepts and really goes into detail for you. So a lot of the questions you have right now will probably be answered if you get this $100 30-page report. Bobby, thank you. I'm sure we're going to do this again because there's just way too much information that we could still keep covering. Sounds like we could be here for hours. But I appreciate you coming on. Everybody's saying thanks, Bobby. Thanks. Thank
you for having me, Jeanette. I appreciate it, and thanks for everyone for signing in.
All right, roll tide. I'm gonna put you out of here. Hang on a second, okay?
You got it.
Let me. Where am I at?
And have a great weekend, Jeanette, and everyone else.